Get started. All righty. Thank you, everyone, for attending tonight. We really appreciate it. Um, we will go ahead and record this tonight and put it up by the end of the week, along with the slideshow presentation. So it will be posted to the guidance webpage. And if we can attach it in time to the Friday newsletter, Mr. Taylor, the principal's newsletter, will go ahead and do that. It's really nice to see so many familiar faces. Actually, I'm just kidding. I can't see anyone right now except my three panelists. So, but I know I have some family members that I've had for, second, third, and fourth siblings. So it's wonderful to see that. And it's also great, if this is your first time around, we're going to answer a lot of questions and get you through this process. Just take a deep breath, relax, and we are here to help whenever possible. Okay. You might hear some background announcements. The middle school night, if you couldn't make that, you're going to hear when the class changes are through the PA system. A couple of the panelists are dedicated and still at work. Okay, so if you hear that, don't run off. We still want you. It should take us about an hour or so. We'll answer questions through the Q&A as often as we can throughout it, and hopefully, if there's anything lingering, you can also email any guidance counselor at any time to have anything answered. So why don't we jump into our first screen here and go ahead and see what we got. Yep, back. Thank you. So we're lucky to have two new counselors this year. They're wonderful. So we all work with a certain caseload and last name. We have Miss Houston, who's filling in this year, long-term sub for Miss Ross, A through COO. Myself, Mr. Brown, COR through HAN. We have Miss Putney, HEN through J. And again, this is just for seniors. It is a little bit different through 9th through 11th grade. We welcome Mr. Pitts tonight. He is on the panelist, K through LES. Last names that begin with that. As you can see, the emails there are well. We have Miss King as a panelist, LEV through N for last names. We have Miss Urquhart, who is running the show tonight, doing everything behind the scenes. And she has O through SH. And then Miss Turner takes SI through Z. A lot of times you'll leave us phone messages. Email is probably best. We can probably respond a little bit quicker. If you don't know who Miss Skepper is, she is kind of the glue that makes everything run for our guidance department. She's our registrar secretary, but you'll hear, hey, bring this to Miss Skepper. She's in our office. Her email is there, but we would be lost without her. Okay. On to the next one. So general information. So some of your students may actually talk to you, unlike my three boys did throughout high school, but we have been going into the senior English classes. We'll continue tomorrow and Friday. We're going to review a lot of information that is in this presentation. So they're getting pretty much the same spiel as you're getting tonight. We're reviewing the transcripts with them just to make sure there are no blemishes on them, incompletes, before we officially upload them into our Naviance. And then we have a shared senior folder. You'll hear us mention that a lot. Go into that a little bit more in depth tonight. It has all the forms that the seniors need to fill out when applying to college. We are a little top heavy on the college process tonight. That doesn't mean we won't meet with a student who's not applying to college. We want to meet with everyone, no matter what the plans are, and answer whatever questions we can. So we'll answer them in the Q&A. We'll type in the response. If we haven't responded, we may address it out loud at the end of the presentation if we see a theme, whether it be SATs, transcripts, Naviance. address general questions for tonight and follow up with individual inquiries with whoever your child's guidance counselor, or just reach out if it's a just a basic generic question is fine as well too. Okay. On to the next screen. So our objective is to make sure you understand what the graduation requirements are. We have some students that came in, right out of Chenery, 9th, 10th, 11th, and we do actually have some new seniors to Belmont High who we're very eager to work with. We will do future planning options. Again, a little college heavy. That's not the only thing out there. Kind of the role of the guidance counselor. How can we support, your child throughout this whole process? What our role in is it? What are our responsibilities? And then go over a little bit what the student/parent responsibility, guardian responsibility as well. Go over a little bit about the ins and outs of the college application and the financial aid procedures. As we all know, college can be quite expensive. So graduation requirements, okay? All students should be enrolled in 6 classes plus maybe a semester class as well too. We've met with them, we've gone over that. You need 100 credits. They get about 32 credits a year. So by the time you're going into senior year, you're in the 90 credit range. We have 4 years of English. We have a strong curriculum at Belmont High, and a lot of the colleges understand that because our requirements, are pretty academic based. 4 years, we get an extra credit there in English because of the senior thesis and capstone, which will have a presentation. The community will be invited to thesis/capstone day in May. Social studies, 3 years. You take world history, American studies, modern world history. 4 years of math. Not every school requires that. We do have students that need to take 4 years. And again, most classes year long are 5 credits. The half-year classes are about 2.5, and that equals 5 credits, taking 2 of them. We do require 4 years of science. Senior year, they do have a lot of electives they're allowed to take. One of them, they must take a science, but it's a science elective. Must take a math, but it could be a math elective, okay? Only 1 year of fine and performing arts, but we have so many talented students. We have artists and musicians and singers, and a lot of them choose to take, 4 years of it, or, at least 2 to 3 years. Physical education, we'll make sure we stay on the students about this because it is a requirement. They usually took freshman year wellness, sophomore year positive decision making, junior and senior year, they need 4 credits. So 2 credits usually. Last year was some type of a PE, physical education class. And this year, if they had filled out an independent contract, which would have been approved in the spring, maybe Zumba, karate, something we don't offer, that could have been approved, and that counts if they do it for either 15 hours or 30 hours. So 1 credit or 2. They could play 2 sports for the high school. That would work. And then they could take a PE class, or they could do a combination of an independent contract and a sport as well too. So community service is only 30 hours for the seniors. If they came in just this year, it would be 10 hours. It's basically 10 hours per year. COVID was still around, back in 2021 when they, believe it or not, were freshmen, if you can remember that far back. I know they're all grown up now. So that's why it's 30 hours for the seniors, whereas the underclassmen are 40 hours. Is this still me? I can't see the number. Okay. So senior future plans, and again, we're here to support whatever you as a family decide on. Is it college, 2 to 4 year? You send about 90% to a 4 year, another 3 to 4% to a 2 year. And then what else do we have to offer? Well, there is prep school. Why would someone attend prep school? Well, it could be because they're being recruited as an athlete. They need another year to develop physically, maybe to get grades up. Maybe they're young for their age. Maybe they're an August or a September birthday and they don't turn 18, until well after graduation. But that is an option. There's a little bit of a different process. Your counsel can go into that with you. There is a good expense to that as well too. I prepped it a year, many years ago, and it was kind of all of the above. If you ask my dad, I think the immaturity he would have said first, but we're not going to get into that. Gap year, there are lots of gap year fairs out there. Mrs. Staveder in town has a wonderful company, Gap Year Solutions. She can point you in the right directions. We do see an uptick a little bit in a gap year, students trying to take somewhat of a structured year or semester. Maybe they're just not ready to jump in. A lot of times you'll apply to college, get in, and then defer. Career training programs, there's certainly lots of them out there. Minuteman Adult Ed has some, auto body and electrical and plumbing. Employment, some students just want to go and work right away for a little bit and see what it's all about. And then the military as well too. The military can come onto campus. We could get you in touch with the recruiter. A lot of you have signed off on the form where they won't get in touch with you, but if you need us to help with that, we're certainly, again, whatever the plans are, we support 100% with that. Guidance counselor appointments. We would love to meet with your students, okay, your children. We really, that is a must, no matter what the plans are, 2-year, 4-year, military work. Parents and guardians are welcome. A lot of times they don't take us up on that just because of timing and everything. We might be able to Google Meet you in, but the main thing is that you push your students down to the guidance office. We've been asking them, we've been having meetings individually. They take 15 to 20 minutes, maybe a little bit more when there are more questions. It's not a one and done. They happen September, October, November. Students who plan on applying early action, early decision, really should get an appointment with us sooner rather than later. They probably have an October 15th or a November 1st college deadline, and we'll go over deadlines in a little bit. But meeting with us, just even if they're working with an outside, college counselor, we still have internally certain materials that we have to send out, and we'll go over that responsibility like I talked about in our objective. Again, email is best. Really should be during a free period, before school, after school. Most seniors have a free period. Some may not, but we might be able to use an X block. Sometimes teachers, we have a little 25-minute X block every day that we can utilize as well too. What do we ask them to do when they come? If they have a college as the plan, students should bring a list of potential 6 to 8 schools that they've researched, review the college planning guide on our website, use their Naviance account. They can do college searches. They also list their schools in Naviance. They can send us an email. We can take a little look ahead before the meeting as well too, if they list those schools into Naviance. So
I think this is where I take over, Mr. Brown. So thank you.
Thank you.
Just quickly before I continue with the presentation, I noticed that a couple people have been raising their hand. If you have a question, just like we started off by saying, go ahead and put that in the Q&A. As we're going through the presentation, some of the other panelists will be able to answer some of the questions that you might have. We're going to go over a lot of information tonight, and so your questions might actually get answered throughout the context of the presentation. But if you had a pressing question, feel free to put it in the Q&A and we can address it. So back to Naviance, you may be familiar with this, especially if you've had students who have gone through the college process before. But we also started working with juniors on Naviance last year, really even in sophomore year, where we did some career interest profiler information, personality tests. We dipped into the college search process last year with them in junior year. And then this year, we're continuing down that that road, working with them on researching colleges, and reminding them of the resources that Naviance has when it comes to finding schools that they might be interested in or that match what they're looking for. So, Naviance includes the Super Match tool, the College Match, Advanced College Search. Those scattergrams and scatter plots are really helpful in helping determine a balanced list for your student, because it pulls all of that data from students at Belmont High School from years past, and who has been accepted to those particular schools, and who has been maybe waitlisted or denied. And it gives you like a good sense of where your student might stand in regards to other students from specifically Belmont High School that have applied to those schools. The other function of Naviance this year that we will talk more about as we go through the presentation is that we use it as our vehicle to submit transcripts, letters of recommendation, and school reports from guidance. It is also the way in which teachers submit letters of recommendations for the students. And so we just want you to be aware that this is something your student will be accessing and using a lot. In class, we have them going in and linking their Naviance accounts with their Common Apps this week. So you'll probably hear Naviance popping up a lot more over the next couple months as you begin going through this process. So one of the other awesome features of Naviance is that we are able to advertise college rep visits. So we have hundreds maybe of colleges visiting virtually our students through through Naviance, and they're all virtual. So a student, if they're interested in registering for a visit, they can pop onto their Naviance account. On their news feed, it will say right there what schools are visiting, what days. We also post them outside of our offices and guidance. And they just go in, register, have access to the link, and they are able to access that anywhere in the building. We do ask that as parents, if your child is signing up for a visit, that you call them in, just so that we can monitor their attendance and making sure that they're excused for that absence. So again, if check in with your student, if they're thinking of attending one of these rep visits, just making sure to call them in for the time period that they're going to be out and indicating it's for a college visit. If there's any issues with that, let us know and we can kind of follow up on our end. One of the really great things about these college rep visits is that 99% of the time, the person who is doing the information session is generally the one who's reading your student's application when it comes time for admission. So it's really helpful if a student is really, really interested in a school, even if they know a lot about the school, to make the effort to maybe jump on one of these virtual meetings. It gives them an opportunity to have a conversation, ask questions, make an impression. And when we talk a little bit more about demonstrated interest, it can mean a lot in the application process. So just the fact that they take a little bit of time out of their day to meet with these reps can make a big impact, especially if there are only one or two students in the meeting. They get some insight into that student. And these are just some of the schools that we have visit. We also have, like I said, hundreds more. You can check that out on Naviance, that list. So demonstrated interest. We're finding more and more schools are looking to gauge student interest. What does that mean? Showing virtual interest. So attend the webinars that are on their websites, go to student panels, information sessions, do virtual tours. If you're thinking about going to visit a campus, don't just drive through, call the admissions office, see if there's someone that you can chat with. Oftentimes when you go on these tours or you register, your name gets put on a little card that ends up going into a file for you that shows that you've made an effort to go visit that school. And that just kind of helps in the process to show that you're interested and that you have made the effort, you've demonstrated interest in that school. So again, signing up for the rep visits, that can be really helpful. Interviews, that is another. If you know that your child is someone who could really do well with an interview, who works well with adults and can really has awesome interview skills, by all means, definitely set these up. If not, that is something we can help work with students on, especially if interviews become something that is part of the application process. But definitely an opportunity to show demonstrated interest. If it's optional, I always recommend doing it because, again, it shows that interest in the school. It shows you're going the extra mile, and it's really helpful in that process. And then after applying, if they go to a virtual session, if they go on a tour, or if they have a conversation with someone, getting the contact information of that person and just shooting them a quick email saying, thanks for your time, really appreciated it. A quick thank you can go a really long way. Manners, politeness, that sort of thing. So just some ways to show the demonstrated interest. It can always help in the process. Okay, so jumping into the college application components, we talk a little bit about what the student is responsible for, and then what we as guidance in BHS are responsible for. So generally speaking, the student is responsible for all of their student information, so all of the core of their information that any school would ever want to know about them. That includes like their resume, extracurricular activities, their college essay, their personal essay. If they're choosing to send standardized test scores, so SAT, ACT, AP scores, those would be included. That would be something the student is responsible for sending to the schools. We'll talk a little bit more about standardized test scores later in the presentation. Any types of talents, any types of honors, awards, that sort of thing. And then the teacher recommendation list. And again, we'll talk about that a little bit more, what that means, but essentially making sure, the light goes off if I don't move well. So making sure the teacher recommendation list gets sent to the teachers so that they know to send the right letters to the right schools for the students. We as guidance and BHS are responsible for sending the students' transcript. Again, we're going over those with them this week and just making sure that all of the information is accurate, clearing up any errors that might be existing there. So checking in with your student to make sure that happened for them. Our recommendation as a guidance counselor, so every school, along with the school report and profile, asks for the guidance counselor recommendation. So we are working with the students on that. The school profile, which is basically we're going to go over it, I think, in a little bit, but just outlines our curriculum, what we offer, and information about the school. And then any special education information that you feel is necessary for the school to know. So that's kind of the breakdown of the roles a little bit. Talking about the actual application. So many of you have probably heard of or are familiar with the Common Application, or the Common App is kind of the lingo for it. If your child has not created a Common App, they likely will have by the end of this week if they're thinking of applying to college, because that's one of the things that we're asking them to do as we begin working with them this week. Essentially, the Common Application is a basic application. I joke and think about like when I was applying to college and I had to literally write out all of my applications. I'm sure some of you can be with me on that page, but this is just kind of an easy way for students to fill out one basic core application. So all of the information that any school would want to know about you: your name, your address, parents' names, guardians' names, employment, educational history, siblings, any education and information, whether you have been at Belmont High School all 4 years, or if you've attended other high schools, academic honors. There's a standardized testing section, a resume section. So anything that any school would want to know about you. The college essay, the big college essay, also gets put in that spot in the Common Application. The vast majority of schools will use the Common Application. So that is kind of the main hub that we have students, focus on applying. There are some schools that have their own application, which is not on the Common App. And so we just ask students to make sure that we know that that is a school they're applying to through the transcript release form, which we will talk about in a little bit. And so just knowing that if you're going to add a school to your Common App and they are not on there, it might mean that they might not actually be on the Common App and they have to fill out a different portal. But yeah, so the Common App basically is just one basic application. Students add colleges to it, and they are able to then apply to the schools individually through the Common App. Okay, so deadlines. I think, you know, in light of thinking about the Common App and getting all of those schools added to their lists, then we start thinking about, okay, what are the deadline dates? When are we applying? So there's a bunch of different options for students to consider. They can apply early action. Those deadlines usually begin around October 15th, November 1st, or November 15th. They also range into December 1st sometimes, for usually around the 1st and 15th, give or take a couple days of every month in the fall. It shows the school that you're interested, so that's why it can be advantageous, especially if the school might be a little bit of a reach. So it's helpful in that process. And it's a good plan for students who are confident in the courses and their grades that they've taken in grades 9 through 11. So if you know, students have done really well, they've shown progression, they continue to do well, and they're really solid in what their grades from 9 through 9 through 11 look like, then early action is definitely a great route for students to go. Some students decide to hold off on early action because maybe they're taking some more challenging courses in senior year that they hadn't taken in previous years. They want to show, you know, that they've done really well first or second quarter. And so they hold off on applying what we call regular decision. Those are later deadlines because it gives them some more time to get some grades in. But early action can be a really great opportunity for you to show that interest, find out a little sooner, which is always nice. I always tell students it's nice to know going into the holiday break if you've been accepted to a school or not, because that's generally the timeline in which they release their decisions. And if they're feeling confident in those grades. Another term that you might see or hear about is restrictive early action. So essentially, this is the same sort of thing, except there's the stipulation that you can only apply early to this one school. It's usually a private school. There's not very many of them out there. There's probably a handful. And so just keeping in mind that if that is a route that you'd want to go, it also might mean that you may not be able to apply to any other school's early action or early decision. And so some of them will allow you to apply to state schools early action, but check in with the school's criteria because they're the best ones so that you make sure you're following what their criteria is for that. Early decision is the other option for students. The difference between early action and early decision is that students are bound to their application and their decision if they are accepted. So you can only apply to one school early decision. And if you are accepted, again, it's that binding contract that you saying that you're going to go, that the student is going to go, and that they will also withdraw all of their applications at any other schools that they have applied to. We really, you know, again, early decision is something that colleges like to see. You're going to hear that from them when they advertise and talk to you about what the best chances of your child getting into their school is. It's advantageous if it is a slight reach as well. And it's, again, showing that demonstrated interest. We really encourage you to have conversations with your student to understand the commitment that they're making. If they have a couple top choices, they may not find out if they get into some of those other schools. And so you really want to make sure that the school that they're applying to early decision, if they choose to go that route, is one that they would be really happy at being at. Another caveat to applying early decision is that you will not know your financial aid package prior to knowing if you've gotten in. So if finances is something that is considered in your personal journey with your student for this process, then you just want to make sure that that conversation is had because again, you won't know your financial aid package and you'll be committing to that school without knowing that. So just making sure that you really have conversations and if you have particular conversations about or particular questions about your specific student's process, just reach out to the guidance counselor and we can help walk you through that. Yeah, let's see. So a couple other deadline options are rolling decisions. So rolling, we tell students if your application is ready to go and it has a rolling admission deadline, go ahead and send it in. Some schools will have rolling, but with a priority deadline. That just means they like to see things by a certain time. it's on a rolling basis. So as the application gets submitted, all the materials come in, they make a decision, and usually within a 2 to 3 week turnaround time, you have a decision if you've been accepted to that school. Again, priority sooner the better, and better chances of getting into the school. Regular decision is typically around January 1st or 15th. Timing works so that colleges will also receive the first quarter grades and usually the second quarter grades at mid-year grade. So just knowing that if you're holding off so that those grades can be seen by schools, regular decision would be the way to go. And then open enrollment is another option for students who may be considering a 2-year school versus a 4-year school. Community colleges most often have open enrollment. There are no admissions requirements other than a high school diploma, but important to pay attention to those registration deadlines and dates so that you are able to get into classes that you want. So again, with all of these deadlines, just making sure that you're having conversations with your student, and if you have questions, reaching out to guidance so we can help you navigate your plan.
Thank you, Ms. Urquhart. Hi, everyone. I'm Ms. King. Tonight, the bulk of my presentation is going to go over the forms and the documents that BHS sends out for the student. And just as a little review, students in charge of like their own application, the SAT scores, and what I'm going to go over tonight is sent by the high school. Jumping into it, let me just go over GPA really quickly. GPA stands for grade point average. As you can see in this chart, every letter that your student receives, letter grade, can be translated into a number. Using these number equivalents, this is how we calculate GPA. An important thing to note, and it is on your student's application for the most part, we use an unweighted GPA at Belmont High School. And what this means is that the rigor and level of your students' classes is not factored into GPA. So regardless of a class's level, whether it be college prep, honors, advanced AP, every A is a 4.0, every B is a 3.0. This is also a question on the Common App. BHS has an unweighted GPA out of a 4.0 scale, and that's confusing to a lot of kids. A pluses are 4.33. If you had straight A's, it would be a 4.0. So that is why it's a 4.0 scale. Some colleges will give you weight, okay? So a question I get a lot from students is like, why am I taking these advanced courses? It does matter. So please don't think it was for naught. It is clearly marked on your child's transcript what level of classes they're in. And colleges all have their own little formulas, but they do take that into account when they're recalculating and looking at your kid's transcript. When applying, the student's cumulative GPA from freshman, sophomore, and junior year is considered, and we will send updated quarter grades from quarter 1, quarter 2. I'm going to go over that more in depth in another slide, so hang tight for right now. Colleges also look at the classes that they have taken, how the student challenged themselves, and how that compares to the grades they actually got. You know, and did the student, like, how did the student overcome maybe struggling in a class? You know, were they able to overcome that, and how is that reflected in the transcript? I think there's also like sort of an unwritten thing that colleges like to see somewhat of an upward climb, right? So if freshman year wasn't the hottest, that's okay. There's sophomore, junior, senior year, and they just like to see that the student keeps figuring it out, keeps getting better grades as they go on. Okay, so how do you send your transcript and also the school report? So there's a transcript release form. Way back in the beginning of this presentation, we mentioned the senior drive, the senior folder. That senior Google Drive can be found on your guidance counselor's classroom and also on our guidance webpage. So every form I reference here can be found there. And like we said earlier, this presentation will be on our website with the senior folder link right in it. So it should be easy for you to find. If you can't find it, just reach out to guidance. So the transcript release form must be emailed to Mrs. Skepa in the guidance office. I believe it's not on this slide, but it's really helpful to Ms. Skepa too if you put in the header college 2024. That way it's highlighted to her. She knows it's a transcript release form. What you're going to do is you're going to list your schools. You may select a choice of how you're applying. So early decision or early action are listed on there if you're doing one of those. then it asks for your application deadline. So we know when we need to submit your transcript by. We automatically send your current GPA. It is on your transcript. And then we will update the transcripts accordingly as time goes on. Again, there's another slide for that gets really specific. So I'll talk about that in a bit. With this form, okay, so the form is sent electronically through email, but we're also requesting a $10 payment. And that can be given through check or cash right to Ms. Skepa. You know, some students choose to hand in multiple transcript release forms, thinking about waves of applications, right? So Ms. Urquhart went over applications that are predominantly due in November and then some that are due in January. So you might not know all of your January schools yet. You are able to hand in another transcript release form, but you only have to pay the $10 fee one time. Okay. So I am going to say multiple times 3 weeks in advance. Okay, that's a very important date. That's when we want the transcript release form. That's when we want some other forms we'll go over. So this is a really helpful slide to visualize what is 3 weeks in advance. So November 1st, November 15th, those are really, really popular college deadlines. We're looking for these forms to be turned into guidance by October 1st. I'm sorry, October 11th, October 25th. Please save this, refer back to it, and encourage your students to get their forms in time, because this guarantees that their documents will be sent to the school by the deadline. Okay, so here's the slide I've been referencing. What do we send as grades go? So automatically when a student applies, we're going to send final grades for freshman year, final grades for sophomore year, and final grades for junior year. First quarter grades go when they are available. Right now, senior grades close October 30th. This can be changed depending on snow days. I hope it doesn't snow that early, but just throwing it out there. And then there is a window of time where students review their grades, see if they need to hold on to them for some reason. And then grades usually get sent out about a week, sending out about a week after that deadline. Okay, so around that November 8th time, we might start sending them out in guidance. So those are first quarter grades. They go to every school that a student has already applied to by November 1st. And then there's mid-year grades. So mid-year grades are sent out once second quarter closes, and instead of breaking it up into first quarter, second quarter, and the mid-year exam, we send one specific column of grades, and what it is, it's an average of those three. A common question I get is, will my child's mid-year exam be on their transcript? It's averaged in. We don't show mid-year exam grades, so that can be beneficial as well. Final grades will only be sent to the college that your student decides to go to. Seems like a far way from now, but just so you know, that is the third set of grades, or the third transcript, if you will, that we do send. Okay, so the school report and school profile. What this basically is a document that we send to colleges that tells them a little bit about Belmont High School. We update this year to year. It has information about your child's specific grade, like how many people are in it. We list AP courses, we list honors courses, just giving the colleges a little bit of a snapshot of who Belmont High is. And what this does is it helps them compare transcripts. There's a lot of different schools in the US, and, you know, putting Belmont High School into context, this school profile really, really helps. Okay, so recommendations. Most schools require a certain number of recommendations, and we went over that a little bit before. Here's what you need in order to make sure that your recommendations are written on time and sent on time. So guidance counselors do write recommendations for their students. What we need is called a student questionnaire. Again, this can be found in the senior drive. We would like that at least 3 weeks prior to that first application. So there that is, again, 3 weeks prior to that first application deadline. There is an optional parent guardian brag sheet that you can find in the senior drive. Optional, but we love it if you'd like to include it, and that way you get to weigh in a little bit on your student's letter. if a transcript release form is submitted 3 weeks before the application deadline, the recommendation will be ready by the deadline, right? So that deadline, the deadline that you have of 3 weeks before is really important just to ensure that all your documents are sent on time. Also, most colleges require 2 teacher recommendations, and we hope that students have contacted those teachers, asked if they can write a rec. Some teachers ask for a form for the student to fill out, very similar to the student questionnaire for guidance. Hopefully that process has started. If it hasn't, please encourage your student to ask some teachers this year and to see if they'll write a letter for them. So that the teacher knows where the student is applying, we have a teacher recommendation form, which I will show in a future slide, but essentially it lists all of the colleges and all of the deadlines. And that way, the teachers know specifically where they need to send their letter. On Naviance, it's really important for your student to list under colleges I'm applying to every place they're applying. Naviance is the vehicle where we send transcripts, letters of recommendation. So we can't send any documents if a college is omitted from this list. So for teachers, right, they get this list of where your kid is applying to. They specifically go by the form that is provided to them by the student, and they will only click and send their letters to the colleges that are on the form. Okay, so it's really important that your Naviance matches your Common App, matches the teacher form. Supplemental recs. These are letters of recommendation from people that are not affiliated by Belmont High School. This could apply to your child if they've had a part-time job or an internship, or a coach that knows them really well. It's someone outside of school that has seen them in some sort of, I don't want to say solely academic setting, but some sort of setting where they got to know them really well, and it made sense for them to write a letter of recommendation as well. These letters of recommendation do not get sent through Naviance because these people are not affiliated with Belmont High School. They must be added to the Common App. Under the school portion of the Common App, there is a place, recommenders and FERPA, where you can enter the email to an outside recommender, and that opens up an email for them where they can just upload their letter. Okay, so it's definitely a different sort of process. And one thing that's important is BHS is kind of removed from that process, right? So it's between your student, the Common App, and the person on the other side to make sure that letter is submitted. Okay, and this is just a snapshot of that teacher recommendation form. So it's a very simple form, name of the student, names of the colleges, and the deadlines. And again, much like the transcript release form, your student can have 2 copies of this form, right? So one form that represents the November schools that they're applying to, and then another form that's turned in later that represents the January schools that your student is applying to. Okay. I am done. I would like to hand it over to Mr. Fitz. Thank you.
Yes, that's me. Hello, everyone. It's nice to meet you all, although I can't see you all. I just want to say before going into this, we all know this is a very stressful process for students and parents alike, and teachers and counselors. It's a stressful process for everyone. So just remember, we're here to support you. We're here to help you. We want to make it through this process. We'll get there. We absolutely will. So just take a good deep breath, be mindful of where you're at, and remember, it's one day at a time. So test scores, standardized testing. Obviously with the SATs, October 7th, the deadline for that has passed. The late registration was the 26th, which was yesterday, if I'm correct. Today's the 27th. But there are some upcoming dates as well for the later SAT dates. So November 4th, it looks like it's 10/24. December 2nd is 11/21. Bear in mind, those aren't going to be hosted at Belmont High School. So it will give you specific locations to register on the College Board website when you do that. For the ACT, it's a similar process. There's one more going on December 9th, which the deadline is 11/3. All the instructions will be on those websites to do. It's not a process that we do. On our end, it will be due through you and your student to be able to do that. College Board is where they'll submit their SAT scores. through ACT to specific colleges. They'll do it through the ACT.org. But when students have their SAT scores, if they choose to submit them, they'll do that through College Board. Bear in mind, many schools are test optional or test blind. Not all schools are. I know Bernard, Cornell, some schools in New York like that. There are a handful. They're constantly changing. They have over the years. So it's helpful to figure out and look up the specific college requirements that you may or may not have to submit the SAT scores. There's also a difference between test blind and test optional. So test blind schools will actually not consider the SAT scores or the ACT scores at all, whereas test optional will still consider whether or not a student submits it. So it could be beneficial, and that's a conversation to have with the guidance counselor. Just make sure you're taking a look at all of those specific requirements to the schools. So, where did we skip one? Oh no, I'm derailing my slides. I'm not controlling it. Okay, yes, I think this is where we're at. So basically, stay informed, stay active, communicate with the colleges, take a look at their websites, go to the admissions page, reach out to the admissions rep, talk to the guidance counselor, have the student do that, have the parent do that. Just open up those lines of communication and we can get that information to you. It's definitely worth going into each individual school because, as we know, there are thousands and thousands, if not tens of thousands of colleges out there. So we don't have all of those pieces of data in our head, but we can definitely find out if you need help with that. Once again, all schools might have their own unique policy. It's very, very important to get that detail before a student decides whether or not they're going to submit their standardized test scores. There is the fairtest.org where you can see it. I would still recommend reaching out to the college in some cases because they do change from time to time. It is very important. And some schools may require both the SAT and the ACT. Some may require one or the other. Some may weight them differently or equally. It really depends on the specific school. Financial aid is the big one. It's the big one. They have changed the date. It is tentatively in December now. They haven't named a specific date in December where they're going to be naming it. It used to be October 1st, if I'm not mistaken. For you, keep your eye on the news. We will definitely reach out to your students with that information as they need it. But financial aid is going to be very, very important to get that going. Every year, you're going to be doing the FAFSA if you haven't done that process before with your student. It's certainly a process that takes time, but they have shortened it from my knowledge currently going into the year, which is great. So it's going to have all that background information that you need for tax purposes to see what money you can get from the federal government, what loans you can get. That's also a conversation that's really important to have potentially with the guidance counselor. If a student or family doesn't know the difference between the loans and the grants and subsidized loans and unsubsidized loans, there's so much that goes into that. Certainly ask if that's a question. Some schools also have you do a CSS profile, so it's very, very important to know which schools those are and when the dates are specific to those schools. You can find out some of that information on collegeboard.org. Bear in mind, they have their own way of doing that. Some of them also require you to do the FAFSA on top of the CSS profile too. It's a very unique process to some schools, so it's important that you're having that information and you're gaining that from the admissions rep and online. Take a look at their websites and use all the resources available. MEF is a great one. I think we're going to hit scholarships in a minute. If we don't, I'll hit that too. But the Massachusetts Educational Financial Authority, you can go to, and they have free webinars that you can sign up for too that are really great. I think they host them like bi-weekly or monthly or something like that. I'm not sure the exact dates in mind, but you can sign up for those. They're free, great resources, available nationwide, statewide, citywide. Definitely reach out. Google is your best friend in this process, and guidance counselors too. Go to the next one. So yeah, post applying and missing information. Remember, the students are the ones submitting that data. The students are the ones submitting all of their information to those colleges. Those deadlines, they hit. And once the deadlines hit, just like anything, they're over. So if a student is looking to get in for ED or EA and the deadline's November 1st, That's the cutoff. That's not in our control. That's not in the student's control at that point. It's the college policy, and there's nothing you can really do about that. There are obviously alternative methods that we can go through, but when it comes to those dates, they are hard and fast dates. There's really no changing that, and the colleges don't have much give and take with those. So make sure if EA or ED is going to be going on, or even a regular decision, those dates are very, very clear, and you're applying for them when you're putting in all the application process when those dates are approaching. You don't miss them. They do take their time to process. Obviously, I think stress-wise too, it's probably better for the student to get it done as opposed to last minute as soon as they possibly can, because it's one more thing off their list to be able to do. You can actually make a physical checklist and cross off the list as they're going through that. And that weight, that kind of metaphorical weight off their shoulder, will be so much less on them, and they'll be so much more relieved. So I highly recommend that, especially because at the end of the year, they still have APs, they still have finals. There's lots of going on at the end of the year. So the sooner the better, get it out of the way. We talked about Ms. Skepa, our secretary, who's amazing, does an awesome job, keeps the team together, has helped me so much as I'm learning BHS specifics. So reach out to her too, but also reach out to your guidance counselor. We're all here to help you in the whole process. We want to be there for you and make sure we get everything in order. We're here to make sure those checklists are marked off. So final decision. Deferrals are a possibility, especially with EDEA. What does a really deferral mean? If you don't know what a deferral means, colleges might not initially accept a student into the college, and they may get deferred. Now, deferred doesn't necessarily mean they get rejected, but it also doesn't mean that they get in. So I would recommend, if you're getting a deferral, the school will reach out to the student and you kind of take a look. Now, if it's a top school that they got deferred for, I would still show that interest. We talked about showing the interest in those schools before. One thing that you can do is reach out to the admissions rep just to ask any more information that's needed. They will usually provide that in the letter packet. Some schools require some supplemental materials, but also stay on top of them, but don't send more information unless they request it. You could also send a letter that you're still interested, a letter of interest from the deferral to the admissions rep that might aid in that process too. However, deferrals, it's hard to say whether or not they're guaranteed. It really comes down to the school, the numbers. Waitlisted, on the other hand, it's a similar process, but not the same thing. So waitlisted basically means they have a cap they take. They might, waitlist another 25 students. If we talk about 100 students, they accept 75, they waitlist 25 because they're expecting maybe 10 to 15 of those students to not actually go to the school. So another 10 to 15 slots might actually open up, just like if you were to register for a course, or as we're registering your students for the courses every year. It's a very similar process. Slot might not be open, but it could potentially open up, in which case the college will reach out to you, but always, always, always show interest. Reach out, talk to the admissions rep, do whatever you can to say for your students to say they want to be at that school. May 1st, final decision. I'm going to that school. I'm enrolling or I'm deferring. If you get accepted to a school, the student can choose to do the gap year. If the school offers a gap year, I know a lot of the state schools offer a gap year. Here in Massachusetts, definitely look at those specific schools, but that's going to be the deadline. Once again, hard and fast with those deadlines. You can't really do much more past that. That's where you're going to make that decision to enroll or gap year or whatever the specific policies are for that school. So take a look. What's the money situation? Have you been to the school? Are you going to live on campus? Is it halfway across the country or in a different country? Does the student want to stay very close to home, or do they want to go away? It's a conversation to have with the family. It's a conversation to have with the guidance counselor. It's a conversation to have with the friends. It's a conversation to have with the college. There's so many different pieces in this. It's really important to make an informed decision, but bear in mind that decision's coming up, and it will come up before we even know it. We'll blink and we'll be at May 1st. We'll get there, but make sure you're weighing all of your options. With the money piece too, I don't know if we actually hit a slide specifically with scholarships. I just want to say it's very, very, do we hit another one with scholarships? Can we just look at the next one? Oh, we do. Hey, look, awesome. I wanted to hit scholarship because it's so important. And I think that some people think if they're financially well off or privileged in that sense, scholarships might not be option. Well, there's scholarships for everything. There are faith-based scholarships, there are gender-based scholarships, background-based scholarships, race-based. There's so many different ways. There are community service. If your student has participated in a specific community service activity for a long time and it was with a nonprofit, that nonprofit might even offer a scholarship. So reach out, contact the people. I love the websites that you can use. We list some here. There are many more, because you can actually filter based on certain demographics that will help your student find out more information about it. The more the better. Obviously, some scholarships have requirements when it comes to like writing essays or doing specific work. So it might be too much for a specific student to do that, but the more the better. And it doesn't matter necessarily where you're coming from. Each scholarship may have their own specifics in terms of what they require for a student or what the student is eligible for those scholarships. Once again, the more the better. Some students might need some money for books. I remember grad school spending $550 for a huge book packet. That money can be used for that. There are scholarships that can be used for tuition. The scholarships can be used for housing. So search. It's an awesome tool to be able to use. I wish I had it when I was going into college. We're going to share all of this information. You can definitely ask us a question, shoot us an email, but you'll get this information. The students have access to a senior folder where they're able to pull up the teacher request form, the transcript request form. We call them green sheets or blue sheets, I found out today, even though they're not green or blue anymore. You can get all that information there. They have their own unique slides. Information on how to set up Common App and Naviance is all included. We'll send it to you and the students. You'll also have access to this video. We might need a couple of days, a day or two, just to get it finalized for you. But by the end of the week, you'll definitely have this video shared with you. It will be up on our guidance website, and the slides, everything. We're here to help. Any questions, shoot us a question. We're here to do whatever we can for you. So I think that's it. Yeah, woo! I'm so happy to be at BHS. It's a wonderful school. I love meeting the students and the families. I've met some of you. I haven't met all of you, but I'm here to work with you. I know I'm the new guidance counselor here, so for your seniors, it can be kind of awkward and strange, but I will help out in any way that I can. We all will help out in any way we can. Let's do it, guys. We got it. Woo!
So folks, we'll hang on for about 5 minutes. If you want to throw any quick Q&A questions in there, we'll answer them verbally now instead of me giving you 6 to 7 typos per response. So any questions, we can just individually take them. Otherwise, have a wonderful night. Please reach out, make sure your child certainly has a meeting with their guidance counselor, but we appreciate all you do for BHS and making it such a wonderful high school.
There's a question in the chat about the chat transcript being shared. I don't know if we have the capabilities to do that. I don't know if any of my other colleagues do know that.
I'm unsure. I can see if it's a feature when I log out of here. If it is, we will pass it along.
Thank you, Ms. Erker.
I think there's a question about Naviance and training materials. I think it would be best to email your counselor and maybe set up a phone call, and we can help you navigate through that. I think maybe in the junior presentation, we have a little bit more on Naviance, which is posted to our webpage. But that certainly we went into a little bit more depth on Naviance on the junior future planning night. how do relatives or bosses? Well, relatives would be a little bit different. I think they could send one, and maybe if they were an alumni. Other than that, I think a boss or, maybe a professor you took a summer class, you would invite them through Common App as other recommender, but please don't invite them as teacher recommender.
I want to elaborate on one question in the chat that's been answered. The question about syncing Naviance, the due date forms in the Common App. It's kind of a complicated question because Common App only takes certain colleges. So if your student has a college that doesn't take the Common App, these 3 documents wouldn't all be the same. I think the most important part is having every school that your kid is applying to under the colleges I'm applying to portion of Naviance. And if they have any questions, they can see their guidance counselor about that. That way, no matter how our internal forms are sent, they're 9 times out of 10 sent through Naviance, and we know exactly where the student is applying to. And that should match the transcript release form as well.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about when the counselor, when the teacher, in the past, I've had some students, well, I need to wait until everything is sent together. No, the counselors will send it on their own through Naviance. It'll be pulled off a portal. The teachers will, and you just make sure, when you're ready to hit that deadline, you go ahead and do it a few days in advance.
Just seeing the question about art supplemental materials and portfolios. That's a really great question. So if the school is a Common App school, there will likely be a section within the supplemental piece of the specific school for the student to be able to go in and open up a portal where they can upload information. Otherwise, if it is a very art specific school, they're going to have probably their own portal for students to use to access and to upload their materials for their portfolio through there. So I think it's just more about kind of what we've been deferring to is having your child check in with the guidance counselor so we can make sure that they're getting everything that they need and the support that they need in getting to those portals to upload the materials.
All right, well, it looks like there's no more questions. Again, we appreciate your time, and we'll go ahead and do our best to get this up by Friday. And we got last question. Anyone want to take it about the Common App and editing? We'll take this as the last question.
I believe once the application is submitted, it is submitted for that specific school. If you're asking about can you go back and update the Common App for other schools, there is an option for that too. So while you're applying through the Common App, you're still applying to each school individually. So if there are things that you want to change for maybe some regular decision schools, or other early action schools, if you haven't already submitted the applications, then there is room for editing. But if you've already submitted the application, then you definitely you've submitted it. You can sometimes communicate with the admission rep if it's not too late past the deadline, if it's a quick error that you just kind of want to switch up. But again, chat with your student's guidance counselor and we can help you navigate that.
The question about in-person info sessions, not in this capacity. Really, if you have any questions, please reach out to your child's guidance counselor. I hold senior meetings sometimes with parents as well, so we're all on the same page and we understand the process. So just reach out.
And our emails are also on the webpage. Okay, thank you, everybody. We're going to go ahead and end this webinar tonight. Take care.